Commander Zarkvel stood on the observation deck of the Dominion flagship, his forearms crossed in amusement. Through the transparent aluminum viewport, Earth floated like a blue marble, defenseless and primitive. Around him, his fellow officers of the Galactic Dominion military laughed openly at the intelligence reports. "They still use chemical propulsion in their weapons," Lieutenant Crix chuckled, his tentacles writhing with mirth. "Little metal slugs powered by exploding powder. How quaint." The holographic display showed captured images of human soldiers training with their rifles. The Dominion officers found it particularly entertaining. Their own plasma cannons could vaporize entire city blocks. Their energy shields could deflect asteroid impacts. Their combat armor was powered by miniature fusion reactors. And these humans thought they could resist with weapons that hadn't fundamentally changed in over a century. "My younglings play with more advanced toys," another officer joked, earning more laughter from the assembly. Commander Zarkvel raised one of his hands for silence. "The conquest of Earth will be complete within 3 rotations. Their primitive weapons cannot even penetrate our basic infantry shields. Send the ground forces to the primary population centers. I want this planet secured before the next council meeting." The invasion began at dawn, Earth time. Massive dropships descended through the atmosphere, their hulls glowing red from friction. Each ship carried hundreds of Dominion soldiers, equipped with the finest military technology from a dozen conquered worlds. Their armor gleamed with energy fields that could stop anything short of a direct hit from a starship's main gun. In New York City, the first dropship landed in Central Park, crushing trees beneath its massive bulk. The rear hatch opened with a hydraulic hiss, and Dominion soldiers poured out in perfect formation. Each stood 9 feet tall, their power armor adding another foot to their impressive height. Plasma rifles hummed with barely contained energy. Captain Thix led the first squadron, his helmet's display showing no significant threats. The primitive human military was scrambling to respond, but their vehicles were still minutes away. He could see civilians fleeing in panic, some stopping to record videos on their communication devices. How typical of a species about to be conquered, he thought. They treated their own subjugation as entertainment. "Move to secure the government building," Thix ordered through his comm unit. "Expect minimal resistance." They marched down 5th Avenue, their heavy footsteps cracking the pavement. A few human police officers tried to establish a defensive position behind their vehicles, firing their chemical weapons. The bullets sparked harmlessly against the Dominion shields, not even slowing the advance. "Pathetic," Thix muttered. One of his soldiers raised a plasma rifle and fired. The police cars exploded in balls of superheated gas, leaving only molten metal and shadows burned into the concrete. Similar scenes played out across the globe. London, Moscow, Beijing, Tokyo, every major city faced the same overwhelming force. The Dominion had conquered 100 worlds, each more advanced than Earth. This was merely another acquisition for their ever-expanding empire. But in the mountains of Afghanistan, Master Sergeant Jake Morrison watched the invasion through his rifle scope. 20 years of combat experience had taught him patience. He lay perfectly still among the rocks, his breathing controlled, his heartbeat steady. The modified rifle beside him looked deceptively simple. Just another human weapon to the invaders. His spotter, Corporal Sarah Chen, whispered beside him. "Range to target, 2,847 meters. Wind, 3 knots from the east. You sure this will work?" Morrison didn't answer immediately. He was studying the Dominion patrol moving through the valley below. Their shields shimmered in the morning light, creating a slight distortion around each soldier. But Morrison had noticed something during the first hours of the invasion. The shields pulsed. There was a rhythm to them, a pattern. "Doc Martinez was right," he finally said. "The shields cycle every 3.7 seconds. There's a gap, maybe a tenth of a second, when they reset." Chen adjusted her spotting scope. "That's not much of a window." "It's enough," The rifle beside Morrison wasn't standard military issue. It had been modified by Dr. Elena Martinez, a physicist who had studied the captured Dominion technology from their first probe years ago. She had theorized that their shields operated on predictable frequencies and that a projectile moving at precisely the right velocity could slip through during the reset cycle. The bullet was special too, a tungsten carbide penetrator wrapped in a copper jacket with a depleted uranium core. It was designed to maintain its shape even after passing through the shield, delivering maximum kinetic energy to whatever lay beyond. Morrison settled into his shooting position. The lead Dominion soldier was designated as officer class based on the markings on its armor. Take out the leadership, and the rest would falter, a principle as old as warfare itself. He began timing the shield pulses, counting under his breath. The math had to be perfect. Bullet flight time at this range was nearly 4 seconds. He had to fire so that the round would arrive precisely during that 1/10 of a second gap. "Wind correction?" he asked. "2 clicks right," Chen replied. Morrison made the adjustment. His finger found the trigger. He controlled his breathing, letting his heartbeat settle into the spaces between breaths. This was the shot that would determine humanity's fate. If it worked, if they could kill these invaders despite their technology, then Earth had a chance. If it failed... The Dominion officer below paused, turning to survey the valley. Its helmet sensors swept the mountainside, but Morrison and Chen were well concealed, covered in thermal blankets that masked their heat signatures. Morrison counted the shield pulses. 1, 2, 3. In his mind, he calculated the precise moment to fire. The bullet would need to travel 2,147 meters, affected by gravity, wind, and air density. It would need to arrive just as the shield entered its reset cycle. His grandfather had been a sniper in World War II, his father in Vietnam, Morrison in Iraq and Afghanistan. Generations of warriors, each passing down the skills that the galaxy's advanced civilizations had forgotten. The art of patience, the mathematics of death, the ability to kill from distances that energy weapons couldn't effectively reach. "On your call," Chen whispered. Morrison's world narrowed to the view through his scope. The crosshairs settled on the Dominion officer's neck, just below the helmet where the armor plates met. Even with advanced technology, anatomy remained constant. Sever the spine, and the body died. He watched the shield pulse, counted, calculated. His finger began the slow squeeze. The other Dominion soldiers continued their patrol, unaware they were being hunted. Their instruments showed no energy weapons in range. Their threat assessments dismissed chemical-propelled projectiles as obsolete. They had conquered civilizations that had split atoms and harnessed stars. What threat could a species pose that still used gunpowder? Lieutenant Crix's voice crackled through the officer's comm unit. "Captain Vex, report your position. Command wants the valley secured within the hour." Captain Vex raised one of his 4 arms to acknowledge, his shield pulsing steadily. "Understood. No resistance encountered. The humans fled before we arrived, as expected." He would never send another report. Morrison fired between heartbeats. The rifle kicked against his shoulder, the suppressor reducing the sound to a sharp cough. The bullet left the barrel at over 900 meters per second, spinning through the air on its precisely calculated path. For 3.7 seconds, nothing happened. The Dominion patrol continued forward. Captain Vex started to take another step. Then the tungsten carbide penetrator arrived, passing through the shield gap with millimeter precision. It struck the gap in the armor exactly where Morrison had aimed. The depleted uranium core punched through the alien alloy like it was aluminum foil, severing Vex's spine and continuing through to destroy both his hearts. The captain dropped instantly, purple blood pooling beneath him. For a moment, the other Dominion soldiers froze. Their training had never covered this scenario. Energy shields didn't fail. Primitive projectile weapons couldn't penetrate their armor. Yet their captain lay dead, killed by a weapon their civilization had considered obsolete for millennia. "Contact! Contact!" one soldier screamed into his comm unit. "Captain Vex is down! Shields are compromised." They scattered for cover, but Morrison was already tracking his next target. Chen called out wind adjustments as he worked the bolt, chambering another specialized round. The second shot took out their communications specialist, denying them the ability to call for immediate support. Panic spread through the Dominion ranks. They fired their plasma weapons wildly into the mountains, scorching rock and starting small fires, but they couldn't locate their attacker. Their advanced sensors were designed to track energy signatures, not a human hiding under thermal blankets, firing a chemically propelled projectile. On the command ship, alarms began sounding. Commander Zarkvel stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Dominion soldiers were dying, not from orbital strikes or nuclear weapons, but from single shots fired by an enemy they couldn't even see. "How is this possible?" he demanded. His science officer pulled up the data. "The humans appear to have found a vulnerability in our shield systems. They're using projectile weapons with precise timing to..." Another alert. 3 more soldiers down in London. A sniper team had set up in Big Ben, using the elevation to engage Dominion forces from beyond plasma rifle range. The aliens' weapons, designed for ship-to-ship combat and overwhelming firepower, couldn't effectively engage targets at extreme distances in atmosphere. More alerts flooded in. Tokyo, Moscow, Beijing. Human snipers were engaging Dominion forces across the globe, using patience and precision to exploit the tiny weakness in their defenses. Each kill required perfect timing and extraordinary marksmanship. But Earth's military had been producing such marksmen for generations. Commander Zarkvel watched his tactical advantage evaporate. His soldiers, trained to rely on their technological superiority, were being hunted by an enemy that had turned warfare into an art form. The humans couldn't match the Dominion's firepower, but they didn't need to. They just needed to place one bullet in the right place at the right time. Back in Afghanistan, Morrison chambered his 5th round. 4 Dominion soldiers lay dead in the valley below, and the survivors had gone to ground. They huddled behind rocks, their shields flickering uselessly against a threat they'd never anticipated. "Movement, bearing 270, Chen reported. "Looks like they're trying to flank us." Morrison smiled grimly. "Let them come. We've got 17 more positions prepared." This was human warfare, not the clash of energy weapons or the fury of orbital bombardment, but the patient art of killing. Every mountain, every building, every pile of rubble could hide a sniper. Every window could frame a rifle barrel. The Dominion had technology, but humans had spent their entire history perfecting the simple act of propelling metal into flesh. The Galactic Dominion had laughed at Earth's rifles. They weren't laughing anymore. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Morrison prepared for his next shot. The invasion was far from over, but humanity had drawn first blood. The galaxy's most advanced military was learning what countless human armies had learned throughout history. There was no technology that could stop a patient killer with a rifle and the skill to use it. The real war for Earth had just begun. The Dominion War Council convened in emergency session aboard the flagship. Commander Zarkvel stood before a holographic display showing casualty reports from across Earth. In 6 hours, they had lost more soldiers than in the previous 10 planetary conquests combined. 47 confirmed kills by these snipers, Lieutenant Crix reported, his tentacles coiled tightly with stress. "Our ground forces are refusing to advance without orbital support. Orbital bombardment would destroy the infrastructure we came to claim," another officer protested. "The Empire wants this world intact." Zarkvel studied the tactical data. Each kill had been a single shot from extreme range. The humans had turned their primitive weapons into precision instruments of death. But more disturbing were the patterns emerging. The attacks weren't random. Communications officers, squad leaders, heavy weapons specialists, the humans were systematically destroying the Dominion's command structure. "Double the shield frequency rotation," he ordered. "Make the gap unpredictable." "Sir, that will drain our power cells 3 times faster. Our soldiers will need to return to the ships every few hours to recharge." "Better than dying to these primitive—" Zarkvel's words were cut off by another alarm, this time from Paris. Marie Dubois lay prone on the Eiffel Tower's observation deck, her rifle barrel extending through a carefully cut hole in the safety glass. 300 years of steel and iron provided the perfect sniper's nest, high above the alien invaders who had occupied the Champs-Élysées. Her spotter, Jean-Luc Moreau, tracked the Dominion patrol through his scope. "They've changed their shield patterns," he observed. "No longer predictable." Marie smiled. "Then we adapt." She had been a competition shooter before joining the Foreign Legion. 3 Olympics, 3 gold medals. Her rifle was a work of art, a custom-built .408 Chaytak with a barrel made by Swiss craftsmen and glass from German optical specialists. But the real magic was in the ammunition. Dr. Martinez's design had evolved in the hours since the invasion began. The new rounds contained a tiny chip that detected electromagnetic frequencies. When it sensed a shield's presence, it would slow its rotation, creating an aerodynamic brake that delayed impact by microseconds. It was crude compared to Dominion technology, but it was enough. Marie acquired her target, a Dominion combat engineer setting up a defensive turret. The aliens had learned to fear open spaces and were trying to fortify their positions. She couldn't allow that. The new shield patterns were more complex, but they still had to cycle. Physics demanded it. The gap might come at 1 second or 3 or 5, but it would come. Marie's breathing slowed. This wasn't about timing anymore. It was about instinct, about feeling the moment when probability aligned with opportunity. She fired. The bullet's micro-adjustment worked perfectly. As it approached the rapidly cycling shield, the embedded chip detected the electromagnetic field and triggered the aerodynamic brake. The round slowed just enough to arrive precisely as the shield entered its random reset. The combat engineer collapsed, purple blood spraying across the turret's half-assembled frame. His squad mates dove for cover, plasma rifles spraying wildly toward the tower. The bolts of superheated energy dissipated long before reaching Marie's position, victims of atmospheric dispersion over distance. In Beijing, former Olympic biathlete Zhang Wei used his skiing skills to create mobile firing positions across the city's rooftops. He would fire once, ski to a new location, and fire again before the Dominion could triangulate his position. His grandfather's Type 99 rifle, modernized with match-grade components, had claimed 6 kills in 2 hours. The Dominion forces in Beijing had tried to adapt. They moved in tighter formations, overlapping their shields, but this only made them slower, easier to track. And Zhang had discovered something else. The overlapping shields created interference patterns. Where 2 shields met, the gap was actually larger, almost a full second of vulnerability. He communicated this discovery through encrypted channels to sniper teams worldwide. Within minutes, the information spread. Humanity's decentralized communication networks, which the Dominion had dismissed as chaotic and primitive, proved impossible to fully disrupt. In the American Midwest, Native American sniper Joseph Crow Dog had turned the Badlands into a killing field. He used techniques passed down through generations, reading wind patterns in grass movement, using the sun's position to blind his targets, creating false positions with reflections and shadows. The Dominion platoon hunting him had lost 7 soldiers in 3 hours. They had called for aerial support, but their fighters were designed for space combat. In atmosphere, against a single human who knew every rock and gully of his homeland, they were nearly useless. Crow Dog watched through his scope as the aliens set up sensor arrays, trying to detect his heat signature. He smiled and lit another fire in a pre-prepared position half a mile away, the smoke carrying a thermal blanket that would register on their instruments. As they oriented their weapons toward the false target, he fired from their blind spot. Another soldier down. Another set of advanced armor that couldn't stop a great-great-grandfather's wisdom combined with modern ballistics. But the Dominion was learning too. On the flagship, Commander Zarkvel authorized a new protocol. "Deploy the warframes," he ordered. The warframes were the Dominion's elite units, 12-foot-tall mechanized suits, piloted by veterans of 100 campaigns. Their shields didn't cycle. They maintained constant coverage through redundant generators. Their armor was starship grade. Their weapons could level city blocks. The first warframe deployed in London, dropped directly from orbit into Trafalgar Square. Special Air Service sniper David Price watched through his scope as the mechanical monster surveyed the area. His .338 Lapua Magnum might as well have been a pellet gun against that armor. But Price had spent years in asymmetric warfare. If you couldn't kill the enemy directly, you killed what they needed. He shifted his aim to the warframe's support unit, a technical specialist managing the suit's power supply from a mobile station. The specialist died instantly, and without maintenance, the warframe's fusion reactor would overheat within hours. The pilot, sealed inside his armored cocoon, couldn't effect repairs. He was forced to retreat to the landing zone, his multi-million credit war machine neutralized by one well-placed bullet. Similar tactics emerged globally. Humanity couldn't destroy the warframes, but they could kill their support staff, destroy their supply lines, and force them to operate without the infrastructure they required. Every advanced system had a weakness, and that weakness was usually the beings operating it. In Tel Aviv, Israeli sniper teams had turned the city into a maze of death. They used the ancient art of deception, creating false positions with mannequins and heat sources. The Dominion would assault these positions, wasting ammunition and revealing their locations, only to be picked off from unexpected angles. The Israelis had also begun using paired teams with specialized roles. One sniper would target shield generators on Dominion vehicles, creating temporary vulnerabilities. The second would immediately exploit these gaps, killing drivers or gunners before the backup systems activated. The psychological impact was devastating. Dominion soldiers who had conquered worlds without losing a single warrior now huddled in their landing zones, afraid to patrol. Their technology guaranteed victory in open battle, but Earth's fighters refused to give them open battle. In the Russian steppes, Natasha Volkov had turned the vast emptiness into her ally. She used a KSVK 12.7mm rifle, originally designed to destroy light vehicles. The massive rounds couldn't penetrate warframe armor, but they could damage external sensors, communications arrays, and weapon mounts. A warframe stripped of its advanced targeting systems was just an expensive, clumsy giant. Volkov had disabled 3 of them, forcing their pilots to retreat rather than fight blind. Each disabled warframe required a technical team to repair, and those technical teams were vulnerable to her partner Mikhail's more conventional rifle. The Dominion's technological advantages were being systematically negated by human creativity and adaptation. Their soldiers, accustomed to overwhelming superiority, couldn't adjust to being the hunted rather than the hunters. On the flagship, Commander Zarkvel received a priority communication from the Galactic Council. The invasion of Earth was being broadcast across the Empire. Subject species on a dozen worlds were watching the mighty Dominion military being bled by primitives with chemical weapons. "You must achieve victory quickly," the Council representative warned, "or risk encouraging rebellion throughout our territories." Zarkvel closed the channel and turned to his staff. "Begin preparations for saturation bombardment of major population centers. We'll glass their cities and enslave the survivors." "Sir," Lieutenant Crix interjected, That violates the acquisition protocols. The Empire wants Earth's resources and population intact. The Empire wants victory more, Zarkvel snarled. These humans have proven too dangerous to conquer conventionally. Better to rule over ashes than to lose to primitives. But even as he gave the order, reports continued flooding in. A supply convoy ambushed in South Africa. A communications relay destroyed in Australia. A fuel depot sabotaged in Canada. The humans weren't just sniping anymore. They were waging a coordinated global insurgency. In New York, Master Sergeant Morrison had relocated to the Chrysler Building. The Dominion had learned to fear the mountains, but they still didn't fully appreciate urban warfare. Every window was a potential firing position. Every building offered elevation and concealment. He watched through his scope as Dominion engineers prepared orbital targeting beacons. If those beacons activated, New York would be reduced to molten glass within minutes. The aliens had decided that conquest was less important than making an example. Morrison keyed his radio. All teams, priority target update. They're preparing for orbital bombardment. Take out those beacons. Across the city, dozens of snipers acknowledged. They had trained for this possibility. Dr. Martinez had provided one final innovation: bullets with electromagnetic pulse charges. They couldn't penetrate warframe armor, but they could disrupt delicate electronics. The battle for New York's survival would be decided in the next few minutes. Snipers who had been carefully conserving ammunition now fired rapidly, targeting the orbital beacons and their operators. EMP rounds fried circuits. Conventional rounds killed technicians. The Dominion's doomsday preparation turned into chaos. Similar scenes played out worldwide. Humanity had learned the invasion patterns, predicted the escalation, and prepared counters. The Dominion's technological superiority meant nothing if they couldn't bring it to bear effectively. As the sun set on the first day of invasion, the statistics were staggering. The Dominion had landed with 100,000 troops. Nearly 3,000 were dead, killed by fewer than 500 human snipers. Their warframes were intact, but operationally crippled. Their orbital bombardment preparations had been disrupted. Commander Zarkvel stood on his bridge, watching Earth rotate below. The blue marble that had seemed so defenseless now looked like a trap. Every shadow could hide a sniper. Every building could be a fortress. Every human could be a potential killer. "Sir," Lieutenant Crix reported quietly, "the Council is demanding an update." Zarkvel was silent for a long moment. How could he explain that the galaxy's premier military force was being defeated by patience and marksmanship? That all their advanced technology was being countered by humans who had spent generations perfecting the art of the kill? "Tell the Council," he said finally, "that Earth is proving more difficult than anticipated." In the darkness below, thousands of snipers prepared for the next day's hunt. They cleaned their rifles, counted their ammunition, and planned their shots. The Dominion had brought overwhelming force to Earth, but they had forgotten a simple truth that every human soldier knew. Technology wins battles. Warriors win wars, and Earth's warriors were just getting started. The second week of the invasion brought unexpected developments. In a hidden bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Earth's military leaders gathered around a conference table. General Patricia Hayes, commander of the Unified Earth Resistance, studied the latest intelligence reports. "The Dominion has pulled back to fortified positions," she announced. "They're consolidating their forces around major landing zones." "They're scared," Colonel Kim Jong-soo observed. "Our snipers have them paralyzed." Dr. Elena Martinez, the physicist whose ammunition designs had made the resistance possible, shook her head. "They're planning something. The energy readings from their ships have changed. I think they're preparing a new type of weapon." She was right. Aboard the flagship, Commander Zarkvel had authorized the deployment of the Dominion's most terrible weapon, neural disruptors. These devices could render entire populations brain dead while leaving infrastructure intact. It was the nuclear option for species that proved too troublesome to conquer conventionally. "Deploy the disruptors in remote areas first," Zarkvel ordered. "Show them what defiance costs." The first disruptor activated in rural Mongolia. The device, no larger than a basketball, created an expanding field of neural interference. Every living thing within 5 kilometers simply stopped thinking. Herds of animals collapsed. Birds fell from the sky. A small village of 200 people died without a wound on their bodies. Satellite imagery captured the devastation, and within hours, Earth's leaders understood the new threat. But humanity had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. They would survive this too. In a classified laboratory in Switzerland, Dr. Martinez worked frantically with a team of neuroscientists. The neural disruptor's field operated on specific frequencies. If they could create interference patterns, they might be able to block its effects. "It's crude, but it works," she announced after 48 hours without sleep. "Aluminum-lined helmets with frequency generators. They'll protect against the neural field for about 30 minutes before the batteries die." 30 minutes isn't long, General Hayes observed. "It's long enough for a sniper to take one shot," Martinez replied. The helmets were distributed globally within days, humanity's industrial base retooling with desperate efficiency. They looked ridiculous, like something from a cheap science fiction movie. But when the Dominion deployed their next neural disruptor in Venezuela, the local sniper team survived long enough to destroy it. The war had entered a new phase. The Dominion would deploy disruptors, and human snipers would race against time to destroy them. Each mission was a suicide run. The helmets would fail eventually, and no one could survive prolonged exposure to the neural field. In London, David Price volunteered for one such mission. A disruptor had been placed in Hyde Park, its field slowly expanding. Thousands of civilians had already died, their last moments spent in confused terror as their minds simply switched off. Price and his team had 25 minutes of battery life. They sprinted through empty streets, past cars that had crashed when their drivers' brains stopped working. The silence was oppressive. No birds, no insects, not even wind seemed to move in the dead zone. They found the disruptor guarded by a full platoon of Dominion soldiers in sealed armor. Price set up his position while his spotter marked targets. They would have one chance. If they failed, London would become a city of corpses. "Wind's dead," his spotter reported. "No thermals. It's like the air itself is dying." Price centered his crosshairs on the disruptor. It was shielded, of course, but Dr. Martinez had identified a weakness. The device needed ventilation to prevent overheating. Those vents were protected by metal mesh, not energy shields. He fired. The specialized armor-piercing round punched through the mesh and into the disruptor's core. The device sparked, whined, and died. Immediately, the oppressive feeling lifted. Birds that had been frozen mid-flight suddenly continued their paths, but their helmet batteries were failing. Price and his team ran, knowing they had minutes at most. They made it 3 blocks before the neural interference from their dying equipment began affecting them. Price's last coherent thought was pride. They had saved London. They were found hours later by recovery teams, comatose but alive. The brief exposure had caused damage, but not death. Price would never shoot again. The neural scarring had destroyed his fine motor control. But he had saved millions. Similar sacrifices played out globally. Snipers would make their shots knowing they might not survive. It was a trade humanity was willing to make. Each destroyed disruptor saved thousands. Each fallen sniper was replaced by 10 volunteers. The Dominion couldn't understand it. Their species were logical, calculating. They surrendered when defeat was certain. They didn't throw away lives for symbolic victories. But humans seemed to grow stronger with each loss, more determined with each sacrifice. "They're insane," Lieutenant Crix reported to Commander Zarkvel. "They know they can't win, yet they keep fighting." Zarkvel studied the tactical displays. 3 weeks into the invasion, the Dominion controlled less territory than they had after 3 days. Their advanced weapons were countered by human ingenuity. Their psychological warfare was met with stubborn defiance. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we've misunderstood the nature of warfare itself." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. In Japan, a former video game designer named Yuki Tanaka had been analyzing Dominion movement patterns. She noticed something odd. Their patrols always followed optimal paths, maximizing efficiency and minimizing exposure. "They're using algorithms," she told her sniper team. "Their movements are perfectly predictable if you know the variables they're optimizing for." She created a simple program that predicted Dominion patrol routes based on terrain, weather, and previous movements. The accuracy was stunning, 90% or higher. Japanese snipers began positioning themselves along these predicted routes hours in advance, turning statistical probability into deadly ambushes. The innovation spread rapidly. Soon, sniper teams worldwide were using variations of Tanaka's algorithm. The Dominion's reliance on optimal efficiency had become a weakness. They couldn't deviate from their patterns without sacrificing the very optimization their entire military doctrine was built on. Commander Zarkvel watched his forces being systematically destroyed by an enemy that shouldn't exist. The humans had turned warfare into something between art and mathematics, intuition and calculation. They used primitive weapons with advanced tactics, crude tools with sophisticated strategy. "Sir," Lieutenant Crix approached hesitantly, "the Council is ordering a full withdrawal. The cost of this invasion has exceeded acceptable parameters." "Withdrawal?" Zarkvel's 4 fists clenched. "We're the Dominion. We've conquered 100 worlds and lost 15% of our invasion force to primitives with chemical weapons," Crix reminded him. "The Council fears that continuing will encourage rebellions in our other territories." It was true. Already, reports were coming in of unrest on conquered worlds. Species that had submitted to Dominion rule were watching Earth's resistance with growing hope. If humans could fight back with such primitive weapons, what could more advanced species do? The evacuation began at night. Dominion forces pulled back to their landing zones under constant sniper harassment. Every step of their retreat was paid for in purple blood. Humans who had learned to hunt them showed no mercy to the fleeing invaders. In New York, Master Sergeant Morrison watched through his scope as the massive dropships prepared for launch. Part of him wanted to let them go. The war was won. But orders were orders. Make them remember Earth. Make them fear humanity. He fired one last shot, taking out a Dominion officer supervising the evacuation. The alien forces scrambled for cover even as they boarded their ships. They would leave Earth, but they would leave in fear, looking over their shoulders, wondering if somewhere in the darkness a human sniper was tracking them. The last Dominion ship broke atmosphere 12 hours later. Earth had lost almost 1 million people to the neural disruptors and initial attacks. But humanity had proven something to the galaxy. Technological superiority meant nothing against a species that had turned killing into a science and survival into an art. In the aftermath, as world leaders gathered to address the implications of first contact, General Hayes stood before the United Nations. Behind her hung captured Dominion weapons and armor, testament to humanity's unlikely victory. "They came here believing our weapons were obsolete," she said. "They left understanding that there is no such thing as an obsolete weapon, only obsolete thinking. Let this be our message to the galaxy. Earth stands ready. Come in peace and find friends. Come in war and find snipers." The audience erupted in applause, but in the mountains of Afghanistan, Morrison was already training the next generation. The galaxy now knew about Earth. Others would come, traders, diplomats, perhaps more invaders. He watched his students practice their breathing exercises, learning the patience that had saved their world. Each would go on to train others, spreading the skills that had defeated the Dominion across the globe. Remember, he told them, technology is just a tool. The warrior is what matters. And today, you've proven that humanity produces the finest warriors in the galaxy. 6 months later, when the first Galactic Council diplomatic ship arrived at Earth, they were met by an honor guard of snipers. Each held their rifle with the easy competence of those who had faced the impossible and won. The message was clear. Earth was ready to join the galactic community, but on their own terms. The diplomat, a representative from a species that had been conquered by the Dominion centuries ago, looked at the snipers with something approaching awe. The stories are true, then. You defeated them with chemical weapons. General Hayes smiled. We defeated them with patience, skill, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for our freedom. The rifles were just the tool we used. The diplomat's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. The Dominion military budget exceeds the combined output of 30 star systems. Their technology is unmatched. Yet we showed the galaxy that courage and skill matter more than credits and technology, Hayes finished. Would you like a demonstration? At a signal, a sniper fired at a target 3 kilometers away. The bullet flew true, punching through a captured piece of Dominion armor right at the shield generator's weak point. The diplomat's translator struggled to convey the whistle of appreciation from the watching humans. Perhaps, the diplomat said carefully, the Galactic Council has been approaching warfare wrong. We've focused on bigger weapons, stronger shields, more powerful ships. But you've shown that sometimes the oldest solutions are the best. Not the oldest, Hayes corrected. The most human. We've had thousands of years to perfect the art of killing each other. When the Dominion arrived, we simply had a new target. As negotiations began for Earth's entry into the galactic community, one term was non-negotiable. Earth would maintain its military independence, no foreign troops on human soil, no restrictions on weapons development. The galaxy had learned to fear human snipers, and Earth intended to keep it that way. In the years that followed, human military advisors became highly sought after throughout the galaxy. Species that had relied on technology for millennia wanted to learn the patient art of marksmanship. Earth's military academies opened their doors to alien students, teaching them that warfare was as much about mind as metal. The Dominion never returned to Earth. In their military academies, the failed invasion became a case study in hubris. They had possessed every advantage except one. They had underestimated their enemy. They had laughed at Earth's rifles until the snipers pulled their triggers. Now, when Dominion soldiers saw humans in the galaxy's trading posts and space stations, they gave them respectful distance. The humans usually carried no weapons, but every Dominion warrior knew the truth. A human didn't need advanced technology to be dangerous. They had turned warfare itself into a weapon. Morrison retired 5 years after the invasion, his body finally paying the price for decades of combat. He opened a training school in Montana, teaching both human and alien students the art of long-range precision shooting. On his wall hung a simple plaque. The bullet that changes history is the one nobody sees coming. His students came from across the galaxy, insectoid species learning to compensate for compound eyes, silicon-based life forms adapting to chemical propulsion, energy beings trying to understand physical projectiles. All united by a simple desire to learn how humanity had done the impossible. On graduation day, Morrison would tell each class the same thing. You've learned to shoot. Now go home and pray you never need to use it. But if war comes to your world, remember Earth's lesson. Technology fails, courage endures, and sometimes one well-placed shot can save a civilization. The galaxy had learned to respect Earth not for its technology or resources, but for something far more dangerous, its warriors. And in the quiet moments between the stars, When Dominion commanders planned their conquests, they carefully marked Earth's location on their charts. Here there be snipers,